I stood in the kitchen, the shattered pieces of my cell phone scattered across the tile like broken teeth. The dented edge still carried the mark of her heel, a stomp that said more than words ever could. "It's just a phone," my son muttered, sipping his coffee as if nothing had happened. Just a phone. After 3 decades of holding this family together, after every holiday meal and every late-night ride to their rescue, I was dismissed with silence. That was the moment I knew what I'd really shatter. Her future and my will. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The crack wasn't just in the screen, it was in the silence that followed. The tile floor still held the echo, that sharp slap of plastic and glass breaking against ceramic. Lorraine didn't move at first. The shattered pieces of her cell phone glittered like broken ice around her feet. One half landed beneath the kitchen table, the other spun once before resting near the fridge. Amanda didn't even flinch. "She shattered my phone," Lorraine would say later, "so I rebuilt a future without her." Earlier that afternoon, Lorraine had waited for Amanda to be between errands, just long enough to show her the doctor's message. Nothing dramatic. Just a reschedule notice. "The cardiologist moved my checkup to next Tuesday at 3. If you're still taking me, I wanted you to know." Amanda barely glanced at the screen before rolling her eyes. "You're always making everything about you." Lorraine blinked, caught off guard by the hostility. Before she could speak, Amanda's hand lashed out. The phone slapped out of Lorraine's grip, flew across the room, and hit the floor with a sickening crunch. One stomp followed, heel down, deliberate. Amanda turned without remorse. Should have been more careful. She walked out of the kitchen like nothing happened. Ben sat at the kitchen island. His hands were wrapped around a coffee mug he hadn't sipped in 10 minutes. He didn't look at Lorraine. Tyler stood at the archway. Just 14, growing fast, all elbows and quiet intelligence. He didn't say a word. But he saw everything. Lorraine's fingers trembled as she bent to collect the broken parts. The screen was splintered beyond repair. One edge was dented inward. She could feel her pulse in her ears, but her expression remained calm. Her breath came shallow, but steady. She didn't say Amanda's name. She didn't say anything at all. Ben finally spoke. "Mom, it's just a phone. Just a phone." Lorraine pressed her lips together, knelt, and retrieved the SIM card, miraculously intact, and the rubber backing that had peeled halfway off. The battery was dislodged but not leaking. Her hands moved with the practiced precision of someone who'd spent 30 years at the post office logging fragile packages and tracking slips. She stood slowly. "Tyler," she said, without turning her head, "can I borrow your iPad for a minute?" He didn't answer with words. He walked into the living room, slipped off his backpack, and handed it to her with both hands. Lorraine set the broken phone on the counter like evidence. Each piece lined up neatly. Then, with Tyler's iPad, she began to take photos. One close-up of the cracked screen, another of the dented edge. Then the heel mark still visible on the tile. She adjusted the light over the stove and took another clearer shot. Her hands had stopped shaking. Amanda's footsteps echoed faintly from the hallway upstairs. Closet doors opening, drawers shutting. Ben hadn't moved. "It's not worth escalating." Lorraine turned to him. Her voice was soft, still calm, still dangerous. "Then you should have said that when she raised her hand." He looked away. Lorraine tapped the iPad screen one more time. An angled photo with the mug, the tile, and the broken phone all in frame. Her shadow was cast long across the counter like something watching from above. Behind her, Tyler was silent, but his eyes met hers with a kind of permission, the kind that only comes when a child stops waiting for grown-ups to fix things. Upstairs, Amanda slammed a cabinet. Lorraine blinked once and looked back down at the iPad. She opened the mail app and began forwarding the images to herself. She added a subject line, "Phone incident, Sep 12. Then she opened her notes app and typed 12:17 p.m. Kitchen. Amanda struck phone from my hand. One stomp. Ben witnessed. Tyler present. Amanda quote, "Should have been more careful." Lorraine closed the app and exhaled. The house smelled faintly of burnt toast and lemon disinfectant. The tile under her feet had gone cold. She reached for the last piece of her phone, the smallest sliver, then set it gently on a paper towel. With one hand, she smoothed her apron, folded it in half, and set it aside. Quietly, Lorraine carried the iPad to the back room, where she kept her file cabinet, lined with years of paperwork no one ever cared to look through. Receipts, birth certificates, house documents, old wills. She opened a fresh folder. Label, October revisions. She didn't slam the drawer. She closed it like a secret. And in the hallway, Tyler stood frozen, still holding the empty backpack. Lorraine stared at the screen on Tyler's iPad, her fingers still hovering over the send button. The pictures of the broken phone were now in her inbox, time-stamped, geo-tagged, undeniable. She could almost hear Amanda laughing upstairs, like this was all just petty dramatics. But Lorraine wasn't playing for sympathy. She was building something stronger. She thought it ended with silence, Lorraine murmured to no one. I started the paper trail. The next 30 minutes passed with the clean precision of someone who'd filed thousands of registered packages without ever losing one. She opened her Messages app and screenshot the last few texts from her cardiologist's office. The appointment shift, the confirmation. Even one from last month noting, "Due to medication side effects, please do not miss this consult." She saved it all. When she reached the final screen, she double-checked the time, 12:17 p.m., and took a screenshot of the message header for additional proof. Then, iPad still in hand, she knocked lightly on Marcia Burns' door across the street. The door opened before Lorraine could say a word. Marcia didn't need details. She'd seen it all from her porch, heard enough too. Inside, the living room smelled of lavender spray and old legal paper. Marcia gestured to the dining table, already covered in a yellow legal pad, 2 pens, and a half-full pitcher of lemon water. "Sit," Marcia said, gently but firmly. "We'll write the timeline before it gets rewritten in someone else's version." Lorraine sat. The kitchen clock ticked loudly behind them. "Start from when you showed her the message," Marcia said, pen poised. Lorraine kept her voice level. "Doctor's text, 12:15 p.m. Told Amanda about the reschedule. She snapped, said I make everything about me." Marcia wrote quickly. Phone was in my hand. She slapped it, hard. It hit the tile near the fridge. Then she stomped it with her right heel. One deliberate stomp. Ben, sitting at the island, said nothing, didn't even flinch. Tyler, at the archway, saw it all, didn't speak, didn't move. Marcia underlined a few words, then flipped the page and started a second column. Direct quotes. "Quote her exactly," she said. Lorraine looked down. After she stomped it, she said, "Should have been more careful." "And Ben?" Lorraine's voice tightened. "It's just a phone." That's all he said. Marcia didn't react. She kept writing. Lorraine's own phone, what was left of it, sat in a Ziploc bag between them. They finished the documentation an hour later. Lorraine slipped the notes into a plastic sleeve and tucked them behind her checkbook inside her purse. Just as she was standing to leave, her cell buzzed. Well, the iPad buzzed with a text from Ben. "Ben, let's not make this bigger than it is." Lorraine stared at the message, then slowly typed her reply. "Lorraine, it already is. You just can't see it yet." She left Marcia's house without another word. At the cell phone store 2 blocks over, tucked between a pawn shop and a tax prep kiosk with sun-bleached signage, a young man in a polo shirt and stretched earlobes took the broken device from her plastic bag. He turned it over in his hand like an autopsy tech. "Yeah, this wasn't dropped. See that pressure crack? That's from direct impact. And this dent here, that's heel-shaped. It's got force signature, like a stomp, not a fall." Lorraine nodded. "Can you write that down for me?" He shrugged. "Sure. You want it for insurance?" She smiled, faint and unreadable. Eventually. 10 minutes later, he handed her a printed report. Screen shattered by force, not accidental. Irreparable damage confirmed. Lorraine folded the document into thirds and slipped it beside Marcia's timeline. As she stepped outside, dry heat slapped her cheeks, and sun glared off the pavement. A breeze carried the scent of engine oil and burning dust. Lorraine walked slowly, deliberately, every step heavy with quiet intent. Marcia was already waiting on the porch when she got back. No hello, no questions. Just a firm nod as Lorraine handed her the damage report. Marcia squinted at the paper, then tapped the corner of it. "It's time to revisit your will," she said calmly, as if suggesting tea. Then, with one brow raised, she added, "And maybe your house deed too." Lorraine sat at her dining room table just after sunrise, the same pale gold light crawling across the wood grain that had been there 20 years before when she first signed her provisional will. The binder in front of her was heavy, fat with documents collected through decades of caution. Inside were copies of old tax returns, her Social Security summary, and the legal draft of her estate plan. Never finalized, only preliminary. She'd never thought of it as a weapon. Until now. She assumed she was guaranteed, Lorraine whispered, flipping the tab marked Estate Planning, 2017. "I never signed anything final." The pages still smelled faintly of toner. And there it was, page 6. "In the event of death, estate shall transfer to Benjamin McCready, spouse Amanda McCready, contingent co-beneficiary." Marcia stood behind her, reading over her shoulder with a tight frown. "They're both listed." Lorraine didn't flinch. "But this version was never notarized. I was waiting until I saw how Amanda treated Tyler when she thought no one was watching." Marcia raised an eyebrow. "Well, I think we've both seen enough." She tapped the page. "This? It's revocable and reversible." Lorraine turned the page slowly, letting the silence stretch. "Then let's reverse it." They didn't waste time. Marcia opened her phone and pulled up the contact for Claire Ortega's office. Claire had helped Lorraine handle her late brother's probate years ago. Calm, surgical, and cold-eyed in court. Exactly the kind of woman Amanda would never see coming. The receptionist answered with a syrupy voice. "Ortega Law, how can I help you?" "This is Lorraine McCready. I need to update a living trust. Soon." She was offered an appointment for Monday morning at 9. Lorraine accepted without pause. After hanging up, she leaned back in her chair. The quiet of the house settled again. In the distance, wind chimes clinked lazily in Marcia's yard. "I'm not angry," Lorraine said, almost to herself. "I'm methodical." Marcia smiled faintly. "That's a much more dangerous kind of woman." They packed up the binder and tucked it back into the cabinet. Lorraine double-checked the locks on her front door, then walked Tyler's iPad back to the living room where she'd promised to keep it safe. That's when she saw the note, folded neatly in half, sitting on the corner of her kitchen counter, his handwriting unmistakable in pencil. Block letters slightly slanted. "I saw what she did. It wasn't right." Lorraine held the paper in her hands for a long time, running her thumb across the soft graphite. No drama, no flourish. Just a child, quietly placing truth in plain view. She slipped the note into a plastic sleeve and placed it inside her estate binder, tucked behind the section labeled Disposition and Legacy. Her house was quiet again, the kind of quiet she'd once cherished. But now it was the quiet before something cracked again. The next morning, as the light was just breaking over the stucco roofs of the neighborhood, Lorraine stood in her robe, sipping her coffee by the window. A cactus flower had bloomed in her small garden, only the second that season. Then, 3 bangs, not a knock, a demand. Amanda's voice pierced the air like a thrown knife. "Why are you telling people lies?" Lorraine didn't blink. She reached down and turned the lock before Amanda could try the handle. Outside, Amanda's footsteps scraped angrily on the porch. She shouted again. "I said, why are you dragging my name through the mud? I know you've been talking to Marcia. I know." Lorraine stood still, coffee mug in hand. On the counter behind her, the estate binder sat open, with Claire Ortega's business card now paper-clipped to the top page. Amanda's SUV had vanished from the curb. but her voice still echoed in the walls like smoke after a kitchen fire. Lorraine stood in the foyer, her hand resting lightly on the doorframe, the same one Amanda had slapped during her early morning tirade. The words were still fresh, ugly, and echoing. "Why are you telling people lies?" Lorraine hadn't answered. She hadn't needed to. Marcia had been watching from her porch the whole time, phone in hand, camera rolling. Lorraine didn't shout. She didn't match Amanda's volume or venom. She simply looked her daughter-in-law in the eye and said, calm as an air-conditioned courtroom, "Please step off my property." Amanda had refused, of course. She paced the porch like a wind-up toy unraveling, accusing, mocking, then finally screaming at Ben across the lawn. "You need to control your mother." Now the house was still again. Lorraine closed the door with a soft click, the same way she'd once sealed letters with care. No slams, no drama. She moved to the dining table, where her binder lay open like a map being redrawn. Inside it, each document had its place. The smashed phone photos, the damage report, the printed doctor's texts. She flipped to the incident timeline, took her pen, and added September 14th, 9:43 a.m. Amanda appeared on property. Loud confrontation. Accused me of spreading lies. Refused to leave when asked. Verbal intimidation. Witness, Marcia Burns. Recorded. Across the street, Marcia sat on her swing with her paperback open but unread. Legs crossed. Phone now in her lap. Lorraine gave her a nod. Marcia raised her glass of iced tea in return. As if to toast the moment Amanda lost plausible deniability, Lorraine opened her email on the iPad, tapped out a subject line. Confrontation, video attached. She uploaded the footage from Marcia, attached her updated timeline, and clicked send. The reply came back by early afternoon. Claire Ortega. Reviewed. "We're not just removing her, we're insulating you." Lorraine read it twice, then printed the email and slipped it behind the incident report. The binder was beginning to thicken, not with emotion, but with strategy. Every page wasn't just memory, it was protection. She went to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and stared at the condensation forming on the side. She hadn't realized how dry her mouth was until she took a sip. Outside, the wind kicked up a soft dust swirl across the street, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked twice, then fell silent. The sound of a car door slamming brought her back. Ben. She didn't need to look through the peephole. She knew that knock, soft, uncertain, like he already regretted showing up. But Lorraine didn't answer the door. Not this time. Instead, she waited for the sound of retreat. His shoes scuffing against concrete. Then a pause at the bottom of the steps. A familiar moment where he always decided whether to push or disappear. Moments later, her phone buzzed. Ben. Amanda says you're threatening legal action. Lorraine's signature curved clean and precise across the final page of the New Living Trust, her hands steady, her eyes colder than the marble reception floor beneath them. The only sound in the office was the soft scratch of ink and the faint hum of an AC unit working overtime against the Albuquerque heat. She stomped on my phone, Lorraine murmured, eyes still on the page. I stomped on her assumptions. Claire Ortega, seated across the polished walnut desk, leaned back in her leather chair and studied Lorraine with quiet admiration. "You're doing more than removing her," Claire said. "You're rewriting everything they thought was guaranteed." Lorraine handed the signed page over. Claire slid it into the document set with the precision of someone who knew that paper, properly organized, could be more lethal than a courtroom speech. Lorraine watched as Claire clipped, stamped, and embossed it into legality. Gone were Amanda and Ben, struck cleanly from the beneficiary list. And in their place, Tyler, sole heir to an education trust that would fund not just college, but whatever dreams he might one day whisper to himself when no one else was listening. Art school, trade training, NASA internship, whatever he wanted, the money would be there. But only for him. Claire flipped to the trust's second section. The education fund is now sealed. Neither Amanda nor Ben will be able to access a dime, not even if they try to use Tyler as leverage. They'll try, Lorraine said, especially when they feel it slipping. Claire nodded. That's why we built in a parental firewall. Legally bulletproof. Access requires Tyler's signature after age 18, and even then, only if you approve. Lorraine gave a short nod and let that sink in. Claire moved on. We also filed your medical directives today. Marcia is now your healthcare proxy. She'll act if you're ever unable, and she's the backup executor on the estate. Lorraine smiled faintly. She already acts like one. Claire returned the smile. It's rare to see two women move this fast and this clean. Lorraine didn't reply. She didn't have to. The past few days had taught her there was no comfort in waiting for decency to return. Only strategy. Only movement. Claire opened a manila folder marked protective clauses and tapped one line halfway down the page. Amanda's name has been red flagged here, if she even tries to contest the trust. This triggers the no contest clause. She walks away with nothing. She won't even get court time. Lorraine's voice was dry. Will she see that clause? Claire nodded. It'll be part of the public record once it's filed with probate pre-notification. She'll find it, eventually. They sat in silence a beat longer. Then Claire closed the binder and handed it across the desk with both hands. You gave her silence, she said. Now give her legal erasure. Lorraine took the binder. It felt heavier than paper should. As she stepped out of the law office into the heat of early afternoon, the sunlight burned against her scalp. A receptionist watered a cactus near the glass entrance, humming something soft and tuneless. Lorraine paused by the potted plant for just a moment. Resilient thing, that cactus. Sharp, unbending. And still, it thrived. When she got home, the air inside her house was cool, but it couldn't mute the storm Amanda must have thrown the moment she realized something was missing. It started with the gate latch slamming, then her voice, sharp, panicked, shrill. Why isn't my name on the title anymore? Lorraine stayed seated at her kitchen table, binder beside her, a glass of iced tea in her hand. She could hear Ben trying to calm Amanda from the porch. I don't know, just let me talk to her first. Amanda wasn't having it. No. You said we were on the deed. What the hell is she pulling? Ben knocked, soft, unsure. Mom, can we talk? Lorraine stood slowly, walked to the door, didn't open it. Instead, she slid open the narrow side window just enough for her voice to pass through. It's not your name anymore, Amanda, she said calmly, because it was never your house. Then she slid the window shut. And outside, Amanda's scream cracked something in the air. It had taken Claire less than 3 days to process the deed revision. Ben and Amanda, previously listed as contingent beneficiaries under a survivorship clause, were now gone. The property had been officially transferred into Lorraine's living trust, with Tyler listed as future beneficiary. Not in vague terms, not in soft ink. Fully notarized, on record, with copies filed both electronically and in a locked cabinet at Ortega Law. The home that Amanda had once confidently referred to as ours someday was now as legally unreachable to her as the moon. When the locksmith finished, he handed over 3 new keys. Lorraine pocketed one, placed the second in a small manila envelope labeled Marcia, and sealed the third for Claire. By noon, the locks were changed. By 2, Amanda showed up. She didn't knock. She pushed the gate open with the force of someone who'd never been denied entry before and stormed straight to the front door, only to find the key she had no longer worked. Lorraine heard the rattle of metal, the frustrated grunt, and then a single loud bang on the door. Lorraine, open the damn door. Lorraine stood in the hallway with her hand resting calmly on the back of a dining chair. She didn't move. The banging grew louder. This is my family's house, too. You can't just lock us out. A creak from the stairs broke the noise. Tyler had appeared, silent as usual, one hand on the banister. He looked from Lorraine to the door, but said nothing. Amanda pounded again. Are you seriously doing this? Lorraine didn't raise her voice. She walked to the front door, opened the small side window, just enough to speak through, and said in a level tone, "You're trespassing. If you try that key again, I will call the police." "You're bluffing." "You already stomped my phone into the tile," Lorraine said. "Now you're trying the locks I just changed. One more attempt, and I report it." Amanda took a half step back, breathing hard. "Where's Ben?" Lorraine's gaze didn't waver. "Not my concern." Behind her, Tyler sat slowly on the stairs, resting his arms on his knees, still silent, still watching. "You're alienating your own son," Amanda snapped. "You're setting a fire you can't put out." Lorraine kept her voice even. "I'm not setting anything. I'm just not letting you walk through doors you didn't earn." Amanda's eyes flashed. "You think you're clever, but you're just bitter." "Better bitter than bulldozed." A moment passed. Amanda turned away in a storm of footsteps and slammed the gate behind her hard enough to rattle the latch. Ben arrived 20 minutes later, his face drawn, his voice tired. "She's upset," he said, standing awkwardly on the porch. "You changed the locks without even warning us?" Lorraine leaned against the door frame. "I didn't owe a warning. I filed legal paperwork." Ben rubbed the back of his neck. "You're blowing this out of proportion." Lorraine opened the door only far enough to speak clearly. "She walked into my kitchen and destroyed my property, then came back and screamed at me on my porch. Now she's trying to force entry. This is proportionate." She was emotional. "And I am protected," Lorraine said. "Or I will be. That's the last time she tries to turn my house into a war zone." Ben didn't respond. Tyler hadn't come down the stairs. The next morning, Lorraine walked into the downtown precinct with a slim folder in hand. She placed it on the front desk of a young officer and spoke with the same calm tone she used when sorting certified mail. "I need to file a police report," she said, citing property damage, trespassing, and emotional intimidation. The officer flipped through the paperwork slowly, methodically, like someone searching for the lie that never came. "She shattered glass," Lorraine had said as she laid each document out on the desk. "So I built a case." The police station was cool inside, the kind of cold that lived in tile floors and fluorescent light. Lorraine sat straight-backed in a hard plastic chair across from a young patrol officer, mid-30s maybe, with the eyes of someone who'd seen more shouting matches than justice. Still, he was polite, attentive, and didn't interrupt. First, she placed the damage report from the phone store on the desk, neatly folded, notarized, signed by the technician. Next, she slid over the printed photos of the shattered phone. One with the footprint visible, one with her kitchen tile, one with the timestamp from her iPad. Then came the timeline log, Marcia's handwriting in the margins. Finally, she handed over a flash drive containing Marcia's video, labeled in clean marker, SEP 14, Porch Incident. The officer glanced up. "You've got everything," he said. "And then some." Lorraine gave a quiet nod. "I believe in being thorough." He plugged in the flash drive and clicked through the footage, head tilting slightly as Amanda's voice poured through the tiny speakers. Shrill, aggressive, unmistakable. The sound of her slamming the door. Lorraine's calm voice, the statement, "Please step off my property." The officer muted it halfway through. "You said this was after she destroyed the phone?" Lorraine nodded again. "Yes, 2 days later." The phone incident is documented separately. She tapped the printed timeline. "This is escalation." He made a few notes in the incident report. "Based on what I'm seeing, we can issue a verbal trespass warning today. If she returns after that, it becomes a formal violation." "That's fine," Lorraine said. "I just want it on record." She signed the official statement in blue ink, the same pen she used for her estate documents. Deliberate, slow strokes. The officer handed her a yellow carbon copy, which she folded into thirds and slid into her handbag. When she stepped back into the September heat, the sun felt hotter than it had in days. The sky was cloudless, harsh, and wide. She didn't head straight home. Instead, she drove to the post office, her old branch, and stood in line like any other citizen, binder clutched to her side. At the counter, she pulled out a fresh envelope containing a printed version of her handwritten statement and asked for certified mailing to herself, a tactic she'd learned decades ago. Postmarked truth. It would sit unopened in her filing cabinet, sealed in time. At home, she tucked the yellow police copy into her estate binder behind the tab, now marked Legal Protection, Phase 2. Later that evening, Claire called. "We've attached an affidavit of abuse awareness to your trust file," Claire said. "It lists Amanda as a known threat. That means if she ever tries to file for reconsideration or contest, her behavior is already preemptively documented. It strengthens your case without you needing to say a word." "Good," Lorraine said, pouring tea into a chipped mug. "I've said enough already." "And Ben?" "He hasn't responded since she lost her name on the title." Claire paused, then said gently, "He's choosing silence. That's a choice too." "I know," Lorraine said, "and I'm choosing insulation." After they hung up, the house settled into a deep quiet. She listened to the hum of the fridge, the tick of the kitchen clock, the rustle of dry wind against the stucco walls. She cleaned up the paperwork, filed it away, then sat at the kitchen table with a crossword puzzle open but untouched. At 8:17 p.m., her phone buzzed. A text. "Tyler, can I stay with you for a few days?" The guest room hadn't been used in years, but Lorraine moved through it like she was preparing for a guest she already loved. "She tried to silence me," she whispered as she fluffed the pillow. He started asking questions. She changed the sheets, not because they were dirty, but because children notice things adults don't think they will. She stacked 3 fresh towels on the dresser, set out a small reading lamp, and placed 2 baskets on the nightstand, one filled with snacks, the other with a quiet mix of pens, art markers, and a new journal, still shrink-wrapped. On the bookshelf, she slid in a mix of titles: Steinbeck, graphic novels, a biography of a NASA engineer, and a well-worn paperback on photography. She remembered Tyler mentioning once, in passing, that he liked pictures that tell stories. The house was silent when he arrived. No luggage, just a hoodie, backpack, and earbuds looped around his neck. He didn't knock. Lorraine had left the door cracked. He stepped inside and looked up at her. "Do I need to say anything?" he asked quietly. "You already did," she said, guiding him toward the room. "When you asked to come." He looked around, taking it in. His eyes stopped on the journal. "Is this for me?" "Yes." "Can I write whatever I want in it?" "You can burn it if you want." "It's yours." Tyler nodded once, then dropped his backpack beside the bed. He didn't ask about his parents. Lorraine didn't bring them up. They ate dinner at the kitchen table, quietly, carefully, like old friends who hadn't learned the new terms of their relationship yet. Afterward, Tyler helped dry the dishes, standing a bit taller than she remembered. When they sat again, she asked, "Can I ask you something?" He didn't answer with words, just gave her a small nod, barely noticeable. "Does Amanda yell at you when Ben isn't home?" Tyler didn't look up. He folded the dish towel into a tight square. "Sometimes," he said finally. "It's not about anything, really. She just finds things." "Has she ever hurt you?" "No, but she says things. About my dad, about me, that I ruin things, that I turn him against her when I talk too much." Lorraine's jaw tightened, but she stayed still. Her voice stayed soft. "Have you told Ben?" "He says she's just stressed." That answer landed like a pin being pushed into soft wood. Lorraine reached for her legal pad, the one she'd been documenting with since the day of the phone incident. This entry, though, she wrote in a separate section, private, Tyler only. She didn't embellish, didn't paraphrase. She wrote Tyler's words as they were. The next morning, she walked the binder to Marcia's and handed it over with the page marked. "We might need this later," Lorraine said. Marcia read the entry in silence, then disappeared into her back office. She returned 20 minutes later with a typed custodial affidavit and handed Lorraine a pen. "This doesn't change custody. It's not a petition," Marcia said. "But it's a legal backup. You file it. And if anything ever happens, or if Amanda tries to make this messy, you'll have a sworn account. Lorraine signed. That afternoon, Claire added a new section to the trust: Emergency Guardianship, Minor Protection Clause. Tyler's name was inserted, with Lorraine named as first contact and caretaker in the event of harm, neglect, or escalation. By evening, Lorraine had just poured 2 mugs of peppermint tea, one with a splash of honey, how Tyler liked it, when her phone rang. Amanda. She let it ring 4 times before sending it to voicemail. 10 minutes later, a text came through. Amanda, if you don't bring Tyler home, I swear I'll call the cops. Lorraine didn't respond. She simply walked to Tyler's room and knocked gently. Sweetheart, would you mind writing down that you're here by your own choice? And sign it? Tyler didn't ask why. He just picked up the journal she'd given him and tore out a page. In careful pen, he wrote, I chose to stay with Grandma Lorraine. No one made me, no one is forcing me. He signed it, dated it. They taped it to the front door. 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. Lorraine opened the door before the officer knocked. He's safe, she said, handing over the note. The officer read it twice, looked past her shoulder, and saw Tyler sitting at the table with a mug of tea and an open book. The officer nodded once. You have a good night, ma'am, and just like that, the cruiser pulled away in silence. She tried to scare me with volume, Lorraine told Claire as they sat across from each other in the corner office of Ortega Law, sunlight cutting through the blinds like courtroom crosshairs. I scared her with law. Claire didn't blink. We're done reacting, she said, laying a folder between them. Now we're dictating terms. Inside the folder were 2 documents, a formal protective filing with the family court and a supporting affidavit citing Amanda's past outbursts, verbal intimidation, and documented threats. It clearly stated that Amanda and Ben were not permitted to claim custodial rights over Tyler without judicial review, and had no legal access or claims to Lorraine's home now that it was inside a sealed living trust. We're insulating you from every angle, Claire said. She won't be able to lay a finger on your house, your accounts, or your grandson. Lorraine signed both pages without hesitation. Each flick of the pen sounded final, heavier than ink, but Amanda wasn't done fighting. 3 days later, Claire called with an update. They're trying to turn the tables, she said. Amanda and Ben just filed a petition, claiming you're unstable, cognitive decline, that you've been manipulated into rewriting your estate. Lorraine didn't laugh, though part of her wanted to. Instead, she walked to her filing cabinet, pulled out an envelope labeled Medical, Private, and opened the sealed report inside. My last cognitive screening was in May, she said calmly. I scored above 95th percentile. Claire didn't miss a beat. Then we'll file a preemptive rebuttal. I'll attach a capacity letter from your physician and request a statement from your neurologist just in case. We'll beat them to court before they even get a hearing date. The rebuttal hit the court docket in under 48 hours. When Amanda and Ben finally appeared in front of the judge, flanked by a rushed attorney and stacks of flimsy printouts, they expected to paint Lorraine as forgetful, volatile, and mentally unfit. But Lorraine walked in, poised, clean-pressed blouse, document binder in hand. Claire handled the opening statement. Lorraine answered only when asked. The judge skimmed the filed documentation, paused on the trespass report, the estate revisions, the abuse affidavit, and the capacity letters signed by Lorraine's doctor. Then she glanced at Amanda, who'd worn designer heels but forgot to silence her phone, which buzzed halfway through the hearing. The judge spoke without raising her voice. I see no cause for concern with Ms. McCready's capacity, legal decision-making, or property management. Petition to review home access is denied. Ben stared at the table. Amanda hissed under her breath. Outside the courtroom, Claire turned to Lorraine. That was checkmate, she said. Your paper trail just became iron. Lorraine exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the cold marble hallway. Then it's time to weld it shut. They walked to the parking lot in silence, heels clicking in rhythm on concrete. Claire got into her car, Lorraine into hers, But before pulling out, Claire rolled down her window. "One more thing," she said, smirking. "I had a friend of mine do a little mail run. Public records are very public." Lorraine raised an eyebrow. "What kind of mail?" "The kind that arrives in anonymous envelopes, with screenshots, cell phone store documentation, trespass reports, a typed list of incidents. No commentary, just facts." Lorraine smiled faintly. "Who's the recipient?" Claire's smirk sharpened. "Amanda's employer." That night, in a high-rise HR office across town, a large manila envelope was dropped in the incoming mail bin, addressed only to Director of Human Resources, Employee File Review. Inside, a police incident report, a repair technician's affidavit on deliberate property damage, screenshots of Amanda shouting on a front porch, her full name, date, and timestamps. The office smelled of printer toner and artificial citrus as the folder was passed to a compliance manager. Meanwhile, Amanda scrolled through social media on her couch, blissfully unaware of the envelope making its quiet way toward her personnel file. She didn't know yet. But she would. And not because anyone told her. Because the office door would close, the HR tone would shift, and she'd be asked a question she wouldn't be able to explain. A question she hadn't rehearsed for, not even in her loudest voice. Her name was called over the intercom like it was nothing, just another voice echoing off the polished glass and beige carpet of the 12th floor. "Amanda McCready to HR, please. Amanda McCready." She froze mid-scroll at her desk, thumb hovering over a filtered photo of Tyler she had posted 2 weeks earlier. Blessed moments. It suddenly felt fake, staged, the lighting too warm, the smile too tight. Around her, colleagues avoided eye contact. They'd heard the intercom too. They always did. Amanda stood, smoothed her blouse, and forced a soft smile toward the receptionist as she made her way toward the far glass door labeled Human Resources, Personnel Affairs. Inside, the air was colder. The blinds were half closed. A printed manila folder sat in the center of the table like a warning. No one offered her coffee. 2 people sat across from her, compliance and legal. Neutral faces, stiff posture, no small talk. "Amanda," said the woman from compliance, "we've received some documentation that we're obligated to review with you." The folder opened. On top, a copy of a police incident report, dated, stamped. Below that, a photo of a shattered phone, screen splintered like a spiderweb, the edge dented. Then, a witness affidavit. Then, a trespass warning, listed under her name. And finally, a still frame from a porch video, her face mid-yell, finger pointed, eyes wild. Amanda stared, throat dry. "We're placing you on temporary leave pending a full behavioral review," legal said. Standard policy when external conduct calls into question workplace behavior. "This is personal," Amanda said, breath catching. "This is a family matter." Compliance didn't flinch. "And yet it involves law enforcement and aggressive behavior. That makes it our matter now." Amanda sat stiff for another 30 minutes, trying to explain the unexplainable. Words tangled in her mouth. She tried to invoke stress, illness, a misunderstanding. But the paperwork was precise. And Lorraine's case was devastatingly complete. When she left the HR suite, she didn't return to her desk. Her name badge buzzed red at the exit. Her access had already been revoked. That night, Ben sat in the kitchen, phone clenched in his hand, jaw locked. Amanda didn't speak, didn't cry, just sat at the edge of the couch with the television glowing across her blank face. A text came in at 8:04 p.m. "Ben, Lorraine. You've gone too far." The response came only seconds later. "Lorraine, Ben, no." I went exactly as far as she did, then 1 inch more. Ben stared at it, then set the phone down face first. The next morning, Lorraine and Marcia sat on the back patio with cinnamon toast and black coffee between them. A soft breeze carried dust from the far end of the neighborhood. where construction crews were hammering something into shape. HR got the packet, Lorraine said. Marcia raised a brow. That fast? Claire doesn't waste time. Marcia sipped her coffee. Next time she wants to stomp something, make it her own resume. Lorraine didn't laugh. She just folded the morning paper in half and read the crossword silently, pen in hand. Across town, Amanda sat with her laptop closed, unread emails piling up, each one more difficult to face. Her hands shook slightly as she opened a blank document. The cursor blinked in place. For once, she chose her words carefully. 2 hours later, Lorraine found an envelope in her mailbox. No return address, but she recognized the handwriting. Inside was a typed letter. Lorraine, we want to reconcile. For Tyler's sake, let's put this behind us. Please. Amanda Lorraine folded the letter once, then again. Then set it in the center of the table. She didn't open her mouth, but her eyes said everything. Because there was one thing Amanda never learned how to control. A closed door that stayed closed. Every sentence was calculated. Not a single acknowledgement of what had happened. Not the broken phone. Not the porch screaming. Not the police report. It wasn't a gesture of healing. It was a probe. A test to see if the door might still be open. Lorraine underlined 3 words in her head. Reconcile. Vague and convenient. For Tyler's sake. An emotional lure. Behind us. Designed to erase accountability. She picked up her phone and snapped a photo of the letter, then sent it to Claire with no subject line. Claire's reply came within 10 minutes, filed under probable claim threat. Documented and logged. Do not respond. Lorraine typed 1 sentence in return. My estate is final. My peace is priceless. She turned the letter over, folded it in half once, and slid it into a manila envelope marked Amanda, closed. Then she returned to her coffee. Tyler continued staying part-time. It had started with 2 nights a week, then 3. The arrangement wasn't formal, but it felt permanent in the way routines quietly take root. No resistance from Ben. No contact from Amanda since the HR fallout. Lorraine didn't ask questions. Tyler didn't offer any. The school counselor, Miss Haywood, had been notified. Lorraine had made sure of that. She's aware and supportive, Marcia had said. Just like we asked. Tyler's backpack now lived half the week in the hallway by the guest room. His favorite cereal had a spot in the pantry. His toothbrush stood beside hers in the upstairs bathroom. That Saturday, they baked together. Nothing fancy, just a boxed mix for chocolate cupcakes. Lorraine let him frost half of them and decorate the rest with sprinkles she found in the back of the cabinet. He worked quietly, but something in his shoulders had eased. When he turned to speak, she caught a flicker of something new on his face, a smile, not polite, not measured. Real. She didn't comment on it. She just handed him a second spoon. Later that evening, while putting away a box of holiday ornaments, Lorraine opened an old shoebox from the hallway closet and found a photo of Tyler she hadn't seen in years. He was 6, grinning, wearing a paper crown made of red and yellow construction paper. Chocolate frosting was smeared across his chin, and both of his shoelaces were untied. She paused for a long moment, then carried the photo into the living room. The estate binder sat on the coffee table, right where it always did. She opened to the tab labeled Legacy. Carefully, she slipped the photo into a plastic sleeve and pressed it into place. That was the version of Tyler she wanted sealed into the future. Not the child who had to witness tension and legal filings, but the boy in the crown. The one who still believed birthdays mattered. That joy could be unfiltered. That safety had a shape. She didn't write anything, didn't attach a note or explanation, just the photo. A record of who this fight had always been for. Lorraine stood in Claire Ortega's private document vault, the air crisp and silent, thick with the weight of things that could outlive people. Concrete walls, steel shelves, and a silent keypad locked drawer. No family photos here, no keys, just decisions, irrevocable ones. 2 certified copies of her updated trust were sealed and labeled in Claire's precise handwriting. McCready, Lorraine, trust file, final. Lorraine didn't touch them. She simply nodded as Claire slid them into the fire-resistant cabinet. The originals are filed with the state, Claire said, locking the drawer shut. These copies are backup, untouchable. And the third, Lorraine asked. Marcia has it. Per your request, executor backup. Claire placed the final key in a flat silver envelope and handed it over. Lorraine tucked it inside her purse, already knowing where it would live. Beside her medical directive, her power of attorney, and a folder labeled If Anything Happens. On Claire's desk sat one more item. A small cream-colored envelope marked with gold ink. Tyler's name. Lorraine walked over slowly, picked it up, and ran her fingers across the seal. Locked, labeled, and time-stamped, Claire said. Not to be opened until his 25th birthday. Inside was a letter, handwritten over 3 days, revised more times than Lorraine cared to admit. She hadn't filled it with advice. She hadn't filled it with bitterness either, just stories about who Tyler was before the chaos, about who she hoped he'd become long after. She sealed it herself, wax and all. Then came the final edition. Lorraine reached into her folder and pulled out the photo of her smashed phone, taken minutes after Amanda had stomped it into the tile. Claire raised a brow. You're including that? Lorraine nodded and slid it into a clear sleeve, behind the letter. Beneath it, a single typed caption. The moment you erased yourself. It wasn't anger. It was record-keeping. Claire leaned back, arms folded. This isn't revenge, she said. It's redirection. Lorraine's voice was steady. It's accountability, in print. They didn't say anything else. Claire secured the envelope and handed it over. Back at home, Lorraine placed the letter into a narrow safe she'd installed inside the linen closet. The keypad lit up briefly, then blinked silent. Marcia came by that evening with a container of lemon squares and the third trust binder under her arm. Did she ever think she'd get to read your will? Marcia asked, setting the container on the table. Lorraine glanced toward the shelf where her own copy sat. She thought she'd read it, contest it, then spend it. Marcia smirked. She won't even see the envelope. They sat on the porch that night while the sun dipped behind the rooftops and turned the horizon a soft, dusty rose. The heat hadn't lifted much, but the breeze was finally showing up, just enough to rattle the mail slot and carry the smell of watered grass from a few houses down. Lorraine's phone buzzed twice in her lap. A notification. She opened the message without smiling. From Tyler's school portal, attempted contact denied, unauthorized guardian access request, name, Amanda McCready, action, taken, rejected. Lorraine locked the screen and set the phone down beside her. The lemon square in her hand had started to melt slightly at the corners. She didn't speak, but the silence said enough. Amanda wasn't just locked out of the trust. She was locked out of the one thing she thought she still owned: influence. Claire stood at the filing window of the Bernalillo County Clerk's office, calm as a stone, the amended trust papers neatly pressed in a black leather case. Lorraine waited beside her, silent, steady. The clerk flipped through the documents without comment. Just a rubber stamp, 2 staples, and a mechanical sound as the seal was pressed into the final page. With that, it was done. The trust was public record now, amended, filed, certified. Ben McCready and Amanda McCready were legally excluded from any inheritance, property, or guardianship privileges. No appeals, no temporary holds, no mediation required. As they stepped back into the Albuquerque heat, the sun slapped hard off the sidewalk. Claire slid on her sunglasses and turned to Lorraine. It's binding, she said. Lorraine nodded. Good. Let them read it like a warning label. They didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, Claire's office received a formal request from Amanda and Ben's attorney. Request for mediation, family estate review. Claire read it once, then again, almost smiling. She forwarded it to Lorraine with a short note. They still think there's a door, Lorraine replied a few minutes later. There's no negotiation for what was already broken. Claire sent back a one-line statement to the attorney. My client is not open to mediation. All documents have been finalized, certified, and legally recorded. Any further contact must go through counsel. No apology, no emotion, just law. By week's end, the final version of Lorraine's living trust, every clause, every exclusion, every protective measure, was signed, notarized, and sealed in 3 copies. 1 in Claire's vault, 1 in Lorraine's home, 1 in Marcia's locked filing chest. The document had weight now, legally, emotionally, strategically. It wasn't just paper, it was a firewall. That Sunday evening, as the sun dipped behind the West Mesa and painted the sky in soft bruises of lavender and copper, Lorraine saw Ben's car slow near her driveway. The same silver sedan she'd bought him for college graduation. Still running, still dependable. Unlike him, he didn't park, he didn't get out. He just sat there with the engine running, staring at the house through the windshield. Hands on the steering wheel. No music, no movement. Lorraine watched from the living room window. The curtain barely shifted an inch. He didn't know she was there, but she saw everything. After a full minute, he pulled away. She let the curtain fall. Later that night, she sat with Marcia on the porch, both women wrapped in light shawls, iced tea sweating on the table between them. You think he'll come back? Marcia asked. No, Lorraine said. Not for me. Maybe for what he lost, but not for me. The street was quiet except for the buzz of a distant motorcycle. Somewhere, someone's dog barked once and stopped. Inside, the house felt heavier now, but not in a bad way. More like a vault that had finally locked. Just before bedtime, Lorraine checked the mail. One envelope stood out, heavy, cream-colored, stamped with a university seal she didn't recognize. She turned it over and saw Tyler's name, bold in black ink. She hesitated, then called him downstairs. He padded into the kitchen in socks, hair messy from a late shower. What's up? She handed him the envelope. He opened it slowly, carefully, like something might break if he didn't do it right. His eyes moved across the letter, then widened. I got it, he said. Lorraine's eyebrows lifted. Got what? Tyler looked up, eyes glassy but glowing. Full scholarship. For the STEM program at UNM, housing included. It says it's part of something called the Legacy Starter Fund. Lorraine exhaled. Claire had renamed the Education Trust, just like they planned. Must have been one of those good legacy people, Lorraine said softly. Tyler blinked. Was that you? She didn't answer. She just hugged him. And outside the house they'd once tried to claim, Amanda and Ben were now locked out of the only future that mattered. Her pen slid across the final line of her updated advance directive. The black ink smooth and steady. Her decision wasn't loud, but it echoed louder than any of Amanda's tantrums ever had. Some walls were built with silence. This was one of them. Claire passed the signed document across the desk and tapped the header. Effective immediately, no notifications will be sent to Ben or Amanda in the event of hospitalization, incapacitation, or death. It's sealed, binding, and recognized statewide. Lorraine nodded once. They don't get to be the first call. Not anymore, Claire continued. Marcia is primary medical agent. I'm listed as secondary. We'll make all emergency decisions if anything happens. Lorraine turned to Marcia, who sat in the corner of the law office with a crossword tucked under her folder. Still okay with that? Marcia didn't look up. You once gave me your last slice of peach pie. I think I can return the favor. Claire smiled faintly. Now, about visitation restrictions. I want it in writing, Lorraine said, cutting in. No contact. No visits unless requested in advance and approved in writing. No exceptions. I don't care if I'm conscious or not, Claire nodded. I already included it. Lorraine's new life, quiet as it was, didn't need an audience or apologies. Back home, the summer heat was settling into the walls, but she didn't open the windows. Some air wasn't worth letting in. She placed the updated directive into her fireproof safe, beneath the education trust records and the notarized exclusion documents. Then she picked up her new phone, sleek slate gray, fingerprint locked and encrypted. The old one was gone, along with the woman Amanda thought she could scream into submission. Lorraine scrolled through her contacts. There were fewer now, but better. At the bottom, Tyler, home. Marcia, godmother, unofficial. Claire, don't ignore this one. The phone buzzed once, an automated check-in from her calendar. 3:00 p.m., Senior Advocacy Group, downtown. She picked up her keys. The community center was plain, with mismatched chairs and an ancient coffee pot that hissed louder than it brewed. But the circle of faces inside was sharp, retirees with clarity, anger, wit, and decades of financial bruises, women who'd been shouted over, men whose wills had been rewritten behind their backs, sons ignored, daughters erased. Lorraine listened for the first session. On the second, she spoke. "There's power in structure," she said. "It doesn't shout, it just holds." After the meeting, a woman named Dottie approached her. "Can you help me write mine?" she asked. Clutching a folder filled with sticky notes and fear, Lorraine smiled. "That's exactly what I came here for." By the end of the week, she'd helped 3 members rewrite their directives and guided 2 others in locking down their medical and housing plans. Each time she clicked the stapler shut, she felt something settle in her chest, a stillness. Peace didn't have to announce itself. That night, she sat on the porch with a mug of hibiscus tea, the sun gone, the crickets loud in the bushes. A car rolled down the block slowly, then kept moving. She didn't check who it was. If they didn't stop, they weren't hers. She scrolled through her phone, not for texts, but to check the security app. Still armed, still safe. The voicemail icon blinked. One new message. She tapped it. Tyler's voice, soft but certain, filled the silence. "Hi, Grandma. I just wanted to say, I love you. And I know the truth. I saw everything that day, even if I didn't say it out loud. I know who you are. I know who she is. And I know what you've done to protect me. I never said thank you. So, thank you. That's it. I'll be home for dinner tomorrow. If that's still okay." Lorraine didn't move for a full minute after the message ended. She just sat there, bathed in porch light and quiet. And for the first time in months, she let herself close her eyes. Lorraine walked beside Tyler along the sun-baked sidewalk that led to the library, the dry Albuquerque wind tugging at her cotton blouse. Tyler carried a small canvas tote with a blank notebook and 2 library returns. Lorraine carried something older, her first edition Steinbeck, East of Eden, gold-lettered spine, pages soft from decades of handling. She didn't say anything until they reached the steps. "I want you to have this," she said, pressing it into his hands. "It's not about the book. It's about what it meant to me when I had questions no one answered." Tyler held it carefully, the way he used to carry bug jars in the backyard, respectful, wide-eyed. "I'll take care of it," he said, voice low. "I know you will." Inside the library, the air smelled like old paper and ink. Tyler went off toward the computers, and Lorraine sat at a small table near the reference desk, waiting. She wasn't there for books. She was waiting for a call. When it came, Claire didn't waste time. "It's ready," she said. "Do you want me to drop it off, or do you want to come in?" Lorraine looked out the library window, where Tyler was now standing in the sun, flipping through the Steinbeck. "I'll come in," she said. That afternoon, Claire laid the final trust certificate on her desk, a thick embossed document sealed with gold foil and blue ribbon. "This is the full version," Claire said. "Final, sealed, and certified. It recognizes all amendments, exclusions, guardianship clauses, and education trusts. The language cannot be challenged. She's out. Permanently." Lorraine placed her hand over it, not for drama, but to feel the weight of it. Real paper, real consequence. Claire nodded toward the document. "This isn't just a trust, Lorraine. It's a new bloodline. Lorraine picked it up and slid it into her tote. When she got home, the kitchen smelled like sugar and browned butter. Marcia stood at the counter in her signature half apron, sliding warm cookies onto a cooling rack. I figured this calls for shortbread, she said, handing Lorraine a plate. They didn't say much. Tyler joined them at the table, still holding the Steinbeck. The three of them sat in a triangle. No roles, no hierarchy. Just a small, quiet circle of people who had chosen each other when blood had failed to show up. Later that evening, Lorraine stood in the garage holding an old photo print in her hands, the image of her smashed phone, broken screen glinting in the kitchen light, the dent from Amanda's heel like a wound frozen in time. She printed the photo again, this time in matte. Then she mounted it inside a shadow box and added a white label beneath the image. The last thing she ever got from me. It wasn't bitterness, it was record-keeping. The final exhibit in a case that had already closed. She placed the box on a shelf above her estate binder, not for anyone else to find, but for herself. To remember that silence didn't mean surrender, it meant certainty. As the sun dipped behind the desert skyline, the sky turned sherbet orange, and the house hummed with soft peace. No stomping, no shouting, just the slow hum of the fridge and the faint clink of a spoon in a mug as Tyler made evening cocoa. Lorraine's phone rang, her new phone, sleek and locked. She checked the caller ID and smiled. Tyler, she answered. Dinner Sunday, he asked. Lorraine didn't hesitate. Wouldn't miss it. She leaned against the counter, the cool tile beneath her palm grounding her, steadying her. The legacy Amanda thought she'd inherit had been rewritten, by hand, in law, in love. Piece by piece, Lorraine had severed access and rebuilt something stronger in its place. And not a single page of it had her daughter-in-law's name. My daughter-in-law smashed my cell phone, so I smashed her future out of my will,